This is my Faceit elo chart. As you can see, I've been going up in elo ever since CS2 was released. But can you spot the exact moment I started aim training? Let me highlight the day I launched Aimlabs for the first time. From that day, my progress skyrocketed. And honestly, it's no surprise. My flicks became sharper, my tracking more consistent, and my confidence in joules has been at an all-time high ever since. But I didn't start with perfection. The first time I used an aim trainer, it wasn't smooth. I missed, I overflicked, and I wanted to quit so many times. But I stuck with it. And now, well, this chart speaks for itself. So today, I'm going to share with you my settings for Aimlabs at KovaaK's, my exact routine, and the playlist that transformed and are still transforming my aim, with each one taking about 30 minutes. Recently, I ran a poll asking how many of you train your aim, and the results were surprisingly very close. So whether you're already grinding or just thinking about starting, this video definitely has something for you. And stick around until the end, because I've got some crucial bonus tips that will make your progress easier, faster, and way more efficient. Also, the last playlist made the biggest difference in my aim. Alright, without further ado, let's kick things off with my Aimlabs settings. Okay, so when you're in Aimlabs, go to Settings, click the Sensitivity tab, and set your game profile to Overwatch. I don't know why, but it's become the gold standard for aim training people to use it, so just go with it. Next, set your FOV to 103. Some of you might be confused by it, because if someone plays 4x3 in CS2, then the FOV should be 90. That is true, but most scenarios work best at 103. I also play 4x3, and I have always had it set at 103, so just set it and forget it. Okay, this part we can easily skip. Sensitivity randomizer, I will talk about it more at the end of the video, so make sure to stick around for me to explain it. Here, make sure that sensitivity options are on advanced, and that distance units are on centimeters. Okay, here is where it gets important. Click on the mouse tab now, and set your sensitivity to match your cm per 360 value. If you're unsure what cm per 360 is, it's basically how many centimeters you need to move your mouse to perform a full 360-degree turn. There are mainly online calculators that can help with finding out what your cm per 360 value is. Personally, I use the Aimlabs one. It's super simple. You just set the origin game to CS2, put in your current sense and DPI, and copy the value below as shown on the screen. For me, I play 0.9 at 800 DPI in CS2, so my value is 57.72, and that's the value I put in both Aimlabs and KovaaK's. Okay, so that's it for this tab. Let's move into the crosshair, and what the fuck is that? Okay, now it's much better. The crosshair I use 98% of the time is the one you see on the screen. It's clean, simple, and works for pretty much every scenario out there. That said, there are times where I'll switch to a different crosshair, for example like a bigger one, for specific scenarios, and I'll mention those when we get to them. Unfortunately, in Aimlabs, I didn't see the way to copy someone's crosshair. There is no code or anything, so you just have to put these values manually. So if you want this crosshair, then just copy my settings here. The targets tab is pretty meaningless for now. We'll do everything in the visuals tab, so let's move into audio. This is just pretty much pure preference, so you do you here, to be honest. And custom sounds, for me, is actually quite important. I will link below in the description the hit sounds that I use, but mainly I use just this one, and it sounds like this. So yeah, if you guys want this one, then it will be in the description. Toggle kill sound for me is off, and toggle spawn sound also off. Now for graphics. Obviously, choose full screen exclusive. Choose your display. Display resolution, I would just set it to the best one you can. If you're playing Full HD like me, then choose 1920 by 1080. Your biggest refresh rate, obviously. Display stretching ratio should be off. I know you might be tempted to go 4x3 if you play CS2, but trust me, this is completely fine. Here, you can choose whatever you want, but I just choose low latency. I don't need much performance. If you have a high or medium-end PC, then I think you should be using a frame rate limiter, because sometimes the frames can go wild here, like above 800 or 900. So I just have it capped at like 700. And here you can also choose pretty much anything. If you've got a low-end PC, then just choose fastest and turn everything off, except for post-processing. Sometimes I notice some issues when I have it off, so just have it on. Okay, let's talk about visuals now. I usually use two themes. One is for like tracking, dynamic clicking, or whatever, where the target is actually moving and I need to perceive more like 3D depth. So this is the one that I call 3D, and this is the one that I use purely for static. I'll link both codes to these themes in the description, so feel free to just copy it. Okay, and let me talk about something important in my opinion. I have HUD set to off. It's purely because I think sometimes it makes you choke, it makes you not focused at the actual scenario but at the score that you have or the time that is left on the scenario. So I just prefer to have it off. If you want to know what your score is during the run, you can set it to on, but to be honest I would just recommend it to off to fully maximize your efficiency, and here everything is off. So yeah, I think that's it for my settings, and now let's talk about the playlists. Playlist 1 is going to be focusing more on flicking and click timing, which is exactly what we want for Counter-Strike. The playlist was originally done for Sticko. He made a great video about his aim training journey, so I highly recommend checking that out. The link will be obviously in the description. First up, VT Speed Switch 180 Warm-Up Medium. This is a target switching scenario designed to warm you up and make you more comfortable and confident with your flicks. Your goal here is to land every flick perfectly on the target and minimize time off target. A crucial tip: don't wait for confirmation that you killed the target. Start moving to the next target just as it's about to disappear from your screen. Push yourself speed-wise in this scenario since the targets are relatively large, allowing you to focus more on speed and precision. Remember to hold your fire button for the whole session. I typically play this scenario 5 times in a row before moving on. Scenario number 2. VT Adjust Shot Valorant Pokeball. This scenario is perfect for stability of the flicks overall. Unlike the previous warm-up, this one emphasizes precision over speed. The Pokeball mechanic means you must stay on target briefly after flicking to it to disappear, so you must hold your fire button throughout the whole length. Avoid shaking off the target after flicking to it. This will only increase the time needed to eliminate it. Instead, focus on controlled, smooth movements. Also, try to underflick more often than overflick. But what exactly is underflicking and overflicking? Imagine this: you've just destroyed the target and you want to flick to a different one. A perfect flick would be landing exactly on the target. Underflicking is purposefully flicking a little bit in front of the target and then micro-adjusting to it. Overflicking is pretty much the opposite, because you flick behind the target and then you have to flick again to hit it. The reason people say underflicking is better is because it's more consistent than flicking perfectly to the target, and it's more effective than overflicking. Let me explain briefly the difference between over and underflicking in Microsoft Paint. When you overflick, you move past the target by an extra distance, let's call it X. To adjust, you then have to flick back to the target, covering a distance I'll call Y. On the other hand, when you underflick, you need to cover the distance, which we'll call A, and then make a second flick for the remaining adjustment, which we'll call B. X plus Y is greater than A plus B. So underflicking, at least in theory, becomes more efficient. However, in the real game, both techniques have their place, and my advice is to practice underflicking more often, but don't completely neglect overflicking. I usually play the scenario 3 times. Next up, we've got VT Peak Shot Valorant Hard. This scenario is great for improving click timing skills and also small distance flicking. Start by clicking the square in the center, then flick to the target that appears. The key here is to flick slightly in front of the target and time your shot perfectly. Aim to get above 80% accuracy. I recommend playing it 3 times as well. Scenario 4. CG Adjust Click Micro. This dynamic clicking scenario focuses on micro adjustment skills, which are critical for long-range duels. Here, you have to stay relaxed and tension-free, and try to predict the direction the target will move next. Don't hyper-focus on a single target. Instead, keep an eye on where you want to flick next. The goal here is minimal tension and correct pathing. I suggest playing the scenario twice, but really focus on what we're trying to achieve here, and that is minimal tension and correct pathing. The next 2 scenarios are an absolute lifesaver when it comes to pistol rounds. Let's start with the first one, VT Cine Click Valorant. Here, the targets are moving left and right, imitating the movement of enemies during pistol rounds. Try to react to a target switching directions by flicking to it instead of tracking it. If you happen to miss the target several times, just move to the next one and leave that one for later. Stay relaxed and react smoothly to target strays. Preferably, you should have above 50% accuracy here. I recommend playing this scenario 3 times. The next one, VT Headshot Strafe Multi-Click Entry. This is by far my favorite scenario of this playlist. Don't rely on predicting the target movements here, but rather react to what is happening on the screen. The target will change its direction when you hit it, so try being more active with your aim and adjust to it. This scenario is super useful, and I recommend playing it 4 times. Let's talk about Mini's Headshot Click Easy. The principles here are similar to the previous scenario. Avoid relying on predictions and stick to reactivity. Keep your mouse movements tension-free and relaxed. Here, I recommend... Whoa, what the hell? Wait, does this make me better than a leash? Here, I recommend either tracking and shooting the target, or performing very small flicks after each shot. Personally, I played this scenario 3 times. The penultimate scenario is VT vibe shot chaining. This is a static scenario, but with a little twist. The targets are slightly vibrating. This doesn't change the technique though. We want to ideally flick or underflick to a target, click it, and move on to the next one. The goal here is to achieve accuracy above 85%, ideally above 90%. I recommend playing this scenario 3 times. The last scenario for this playlist, VT adjust click. This is a dynamic clicking scenario with an evasive target. This one also adds a new mechanic called blinking, which makes the target move away to a new position each time you hit it. Try to visually see where the target blinked to after clicking onto it. After seeing the new position of the target, read where it's going to go next and flick to it. Don't rush it, and definitely don't spam click. It just ruins the purpose of this scenario. I played the scenario 3 times. This playlist is a mix. It has flicking, micro adjustments, tracking, and dynamic clicking. It is week 3 of the Sticko program, so let's get right into it. The first one, VT Speed Switch 180 Warm-Up Advanced. This is a tougher version of the scenario from playlist 1. The targets are smaller and there are 4 instead of 5. But the methodology stays the same. Your goal here is to land every flick and minimize time off target. Push yourself speed-wise and remember to hold your fire button for the whole session. I typically play this scenario 5 times in a row before moving on. Scenario 2, VT 1W2TS Small Blinks Valorant. This is a static scenario where the target blinks after you click it. Since the majority of the motions that we perform in CS2 are definitely smaller flicks and micro corrections, we want to make sure we don't neglect the technique here. Start with an initial flick, and then, if necessary, make smooth micro adjustments to eliminate the target. When a target blinks to a different spot, try to adjust to it in one smooth motion. Don't spam shots, focus on controlled movements and eliminate the targets one after another. Aim for above 85% accuracy and repeat the scenario twice. VT Angle Shot Valorant Hard. A challenging dynamic clicking scenario designed to stimulate target reading and click timing skills. Make sure to apply lower tension in the flick landing and make sure to use your peripheral vision. By that, I mean prioritize targets that have just strafed. It will make single targets easier to read and your aim will be more active this way. Prioritize precision and aim to get 75% or higher accuracy. I recommend running this scenario 3 times. Next up, my favorite scenario of the playlist, VT Booker Switch Reflex Dodge. Our first truly tracking scenario of the playlist. This scenario is insane for movement reading when it comes to strafes, and it will add a lot of control to your aim. With every tracking scenario, you need to remember to hold your fire button all the time. Most importantly, avoid predicting entirely. Again?
Hello there.
Predicting is not the purpose of tracking scenarios. You want to focus on target's current motion and trust that it's going to keep going in this direction. If it happens to strafe, react smoothly and flick back to the target. Take it slow, don't overreact, and make sure to have minimal tension. I played the scenario 3 times. VT Peak Track Valorant Hard. This one is actually pretty simple. Targets appear on the left or right wall in 3 different sizes, which means they'll move at 3 different speeds. Here you will train your speed matching, which will be great for dealing with wide swings in CS. Try and match the target's speed and follow it until the end. After each target, return your crosshair to the center before the next one appears. I recommend playing this scenario 3 times. Another pretty straightforward task, VT Smooth Thin Strafes Easy. This scenario focuses more on reactivity than any other in this playlist, so it might be difficult at first if your reactive skills are not well developed yet. Your main focus here should be direction changes. React to the target strafing by first acknowledging where it's gone, and then moving your crosshair onto it. Don't let your crosshair jitter and avoid predicting at any cost. It's all about developing fluidity. I usually run this scenario 3 times, and obviously remember to hold your fire button throughout. VT Precision Adjust Truck. Another blinking scenario. The target switches directions quite often, so you need to be aware and active all the time. After it blinks, see where it's gone and then flick to it. Keep your tracking controlled, avoid shakiness and overcorrections. Hold your fire button throughout the whole scenario and repeat it twice. VT Minis Headshot Strafe Click. Just a harder version of what was in week 1. Keep your mouse movement tension-free and relaxed. Again, I recommend either tracking and shooting the target, or performing very small flicks after each shot. Personally, I played this scenario 3 times before moving on. The last scenario for this playlist, VT Pot Target Click One Shot. This scenario forces you to keep track of many targets at the same time. The principles are very similar to dynamic clicking scenarios we've already gone through. Flick a little in front of the target and time your click perfectly. Click the target's head to destroy it in one shot. This is by far the most frustrating scenario in my opinion, so I only played twice. Alright, let's switch to KovaaK's now. Let's go into the settings and let me talk briefly about the settings that I use here. Visual themes, I will obviously link them in the description, but 99% of the times I'm using Clover Alternate. If I get bored, then I'll switch to something else like Clover Bubbles, but usually I stay in that Clover range zone. Override scenarios visuals, I have it ticked on. Sensitivity, I talked about this during the Aimlabs settings, so I have it on 57.72 centimeters per 360. If I go here, I have it set on DPI 800. Sensitivity randomizer, I have it off. I'm going to talk about it in a while, so be patient, please. Invert mouse, obviously off. Zoom sense, whatever. Toggle zoom, whatever. FOV 103, just like in Aimlabs, also Overwatch. Crosshair, I'm currently using this crosshair. It's very similar to the one in Aimlabs, so it pretty much translates over. Game max FPS, have it set on 700, just like in Aimlabs. Menu max FPS, whatever. Countdown before challenge start, I have it on 1. I just don't like wasting time, so I prefer it on 1. I didn't talk about this in the Aimlabs settings part, but on keypoints, I have fire set on left control. I will talk about it at the end as well in the bonus tips, so stick around. And here pretty much everything is still the same. Into the weapons tab, show weapon is obviously off, and here it doesn't really matter, maybe except for hit markers. If you want to copy them from me, then feel free. Video tab, video mode obviously full screen, resolution full HD for me, refresh rate, the highest refresh rate, 360 for me, VSync off, and here you can just copy them if you want, to be honest. In the visuals, I don't really change anything because I have, the custom themes on. If you prefer, you can tweak something in here. Okay, sound is pretty important actually. Master volume, just choose whatever you want. Shoot sounds cooldown is 0.08 for me. These are the hit sounds that I'm using. So if you want, I'll link them also in the description if you want to use the same ones. And here I did not really change anything. UI colors is easily skippable, I would say. It's pure preference. HUD, as you know, I have almost everything off. So I've got player info off, I've got clock off, I've got scenario name off. I mean, everything is pretty much off except for the health bars. And MISC now, this is pretty much whatever. I have it default, I think. So yeah, I think that's it for my KovaaK's settings. Now let's go to the playlist. Let me say this up front. This is a tracking only playlist. Some of you might be wondering, is tracking really that important in CS? I would argue it's actually one of the most essential skills for developing smoothness, precision, and overall fluidity in your gameplay. While flicking gets the glory in every highlight, great tracking helps you maintain control in chaotic moments, making your movements more consistent and deliberate. Although the scenarios may seem similar, each one has its own purpose. Every scenario here should be played 5 times, so let's quickly break them down. First, control sphere. In order to make the most out of this scenario, you have to play relaxed. By that, I don't mean having a relaxed grip, even though that is also what you need. You also need to let go of any urgency to move faster than necessary. Control is the priority here. When the target switches directions, don't panic or make immediate micro corrections. Instead, aim for clean adjustments that match the target's speed as you catch by. By doing this, you'll develop smooth transitions and avoid the jitters that come with overreacting. Think of this as building the foundation for all your other tracking skills. It's about consistency, not perfection. Adjust track. Yup, another scenario where the target blinks. Adjust track is fantastic for combining speed with control, which is vital in CS2. The goal is simple. When the target blinks, flick to it, but once you're on it, don't let your crosshair wobble around. You'll need to track the target smoothly until it blinks again, forcing you to stay in control while maintaining speed. Shaky aim won't cut it. You need to focus on stability and precision. Think of this as training for those tense moments when you're trying to stay on a moving enemy mid-fight. Number 3 on the list, Clover roll control. Most of the time in CS, you rely on your arm or wrist for aim adjustments, whether it's flicking, micro-correcting, or just any movement in general. But there are times where moving the mouse with your fingers is going to be much more useful. Think about it. When you're using a deagle, sometimes you only need the tiniest adjustment to land a headshot. This scenario is designed to practice these small fingertip movements. Use a lower sensitivity and focus exclusively on controlling your mouse with your fingers. Don't worry about your score. What matters is developing the right technique. As you build this skill, you'll notice how much easier it becomes to nail those tiny, pixel-perfect corrections in-game. Air Angelic 4, easy 80%. This is the GOAT of scenarios out there. Your main goal here is to hear the hit sound almost all the time. Why? Because every hit sound confirms that your crosshair is glued to the target. The focus isn't on scoring high, it's on never losing the track of your target. Even though the bot moves slowly, staying locked onto it consistently will teach you incredible movement reading skills. It might feel basic, but mastering this scenario builds a foundation that carries over to every other tracking scenario. Consistency here equals control everywhere. Air Angelic 4. This is a much tougher version of the previous scenario, and it combines everything you've practiced so far. Movement reading, fingertip control, clean corrections. This scenario might be difficult at first, but that's exactly what we want. We don't want to get comfortable. We need to push ourselves through difficulty to improve. And trust me, after some practice sessions, you will start enjoying how good you've become at this scenario. Centering 1. I added this scenario recently, and I can confidently say it's a game changer. 10 bots and speed matching have always been a challenge for me, but grinding this scenario made me realize how achievable it is with the right practice. The concept is simple: match the target's speed at all times. If you're tracking behind, speed up slightly. If you're ahead, slow down. When the target changes directions, flex smoothly to stay on it. It's all about finding that balance and maintaining control throughout the exercise. I realized that this playlist may be a little too difficult for a lot of people, so in the description I linked a code to an easier version of my playlist. Alright, let's get you those bonus tips I promised to talk about. The first one, warm up physically. Before you even touch your mouse, take a few minutes to warm up your hands. Trust me, this isn't just for athletes, it applies to gamers too. Stretch your wrists, fingers, and forearms. Not only does this prevent strain, but it also gives you more control during intense training sessions. So do yourself a favor and spend these additional 2 to 3 minutes to properly get the blood flowing. Number 2. Experiment with your sensitivity. I would say that this is one of the tips you have to try. If you feel like your training is getting too comfortable, it's time to shake things up. Playing on a higher sensitivity might make your aim shaky and jittery at first, but that's exactly the point. It demands more control over your movements. It improves wrist accuracy and emphasizes mistakes so you can spot your weaknesses and learn from them easily. On the other hand, playing on a sensitivity that's lower than usual will make it easier to micro-correct and will train more of your arm. By alternating between high and low sensitivity during training, you're essentially boosting your effectiveness. Not only does this keep your training fresh and challenging and fun, but it also gives you a deeper understanding of how your aim mechanics work. Over time, you'll become more adaptable and capable of handling any scenario in-game. We can't talk about changing your sense without mentioning the sensitivity randomizer. The sensitivity randomizer does exactly what it sounds like. It randomly changes your sensitivity settings during a scenario. The adjustment can occur every few seconds or after specific actions, depending on how you set it up. Both Aimlabs and KovaaK's have an inbuilt sensitivity randomizer, so if you want to try it out, feel free. Personally, I haven't really had much success with it, and I much rather just manually change my sensitivity. But please go ahead and give it a try. And don't forget to tell me in the comments below if you found it useful. Super useful tip number 3. Bind your fire button to a different one. I have mine set on control. It may sound weird at first, but it's something I can't imagine aim training without. Holding mouse 1 all the time during training can be exhausting and, well, detrimental to an extent. I only use it for things like tracking and target switching, but it really does make a difference. With mouse 1 out of the equation, you can focus entirely on your aim mechanics. You can keep your mouse grip relaxed, and it allows for more range of motion. While this setup is for training only, the increased control and reduced tension you develop will carry over into regular gameplay. Last tip I have for you today is to mix up the order of the scenarios. Don't play the same scenario repeatedly in a row. Instead, play one scenario, switch to another, and then come back. This approach keeps your brain engaged and makes your training feel fresh and dynamic. Start with a scenario that challenges your weakest skill, move to something more comfortable, and then finish with a moderate difficulty drill. For example, you might want to do VT Small Blinks Valorant first, since it trains micro adjustments. After that, move to something more dynamic, like VT Peak Track Valorant. Then, maybe you play a tracking scenario, like VT smooth, thin, strafes easy. After that, go back to the micro adjustment scenario and repeat that 3 times. Here, you're only limited by your own imagination, so give it a shot and let me know how it goes. Remember, aim training isn't about being perfect right away. It's about showing up, putting in the work, and pushing through those sessions where it feels like nothing is clicking. Also, let me know in the comments, which playlist or tip are you going to try out first? Or if you've already been using aim trainers, which one is your favorite scenario? I would love to hear about your journey. Finally, don't forget to check out the description for all the links and codes I mentioned, including Stickwell's video, the easier version of my KovaaK's playlist, and more of my videos which will help you improve greatly at CS. Thanks for watching and, as always, happy grinding.